I'm Juliano Aniceto. I'm a conducting student at the DMA program, conducting in Marian Alsop's studio. The idea of the research came in the Foundations for Music and Research, a class that Kathleen teaches, and she presented us an artist that just review great newspapers articles. And I was thinking, how about doing this with music? So we started discussing, and the idea of like getting into the programs came. And researching how was the inclusion, diversity, and how was classical music being approached at Peabody. So we applied for the Hugh Hopkins Fellowship, and we are really glad that we are able to develop this research here. It's something that really can contribute for the future and can give us the basis, the data collection that can provide us a better data for creating more diversity and more inclusion in our programations. So the materials that we have in the archives are quite the main source, the main core information for this research. When we think about the programs that were performed here since 1977 till nowadays, good part of this information are in the archives, registered in the programs, and we intend to collect all the information basically from them. Really recently, we had the moving of these programs storage for a digital setting. So right now we are looking for all the materials that are in the archives and try to collect data from them. I really think that it's important to construct and to understand the path that we are looking for, that we are tracing since 1977 for now, because right now we are talking about diversity and inclusion of different groups and ethnic groups and genders in the archives in the program for Peabody ensembles. But how have we done this in the past, and how are we creating this this path? It's important to have the numbers. It's important to have the data, so we could trace a better path and acknowledge, for example, composers, genders that were not featured yet in the Peabody ensembles programmation. So the idea is to have exactly the numbers so we can know what we have done and what lacks to be done, what we need to do in the future years. I think the artistic administrators can definitely use the numbers of this research. For example, if we had a really small number of Argentinian music played here, we can feature more Argentinian composers. Or if you have, for example, a small number of women composers being played by the Peabody ensembles, they definitely can start moving forward and acknowledging these other groups. So we are not restricting our research from in any way. We are going to research about European composers and male composers and everything, but we will definitely have the numbers that will allow the artistic administration at Peabody and the direction of the conservatory to create a more broad perspective in terms of diversity and inclusion in orchestral performances.
Process.
I think it has been a great experience to work here at the library, and I think one of the greatest learning experiences I had here is about how to be really precise about cataloging information. It's something that I have never had contact before at this level. So I think the work in the library, number one, helps me to understand how important it is to have all the information organized, and also helped me a lot in terms of knowing better Peabody and know how rich we have, how rich the library is, and how much materials we have right now for the consultation of the students and the faculty. I think this research can acknowledge not only the Hugh Hopkins research can acknowledge not only regions of the world, but also can acknowledge a certain area of the inclusion and diversity in artistic administration that have never, or at least that I haven't seen being approached before. So far, when we see artistic administrators of major orchestras talking about inclusion, they talk only about regions of the world, Latin American music or European music. And all these regions, they have really specific cultures. For example, in Latin America, if we talk about Latin America, we have Argentinian music that's completely different from Mexican music, and both of these countries are situated in Latin America. So we can't place them in a single bucket and treat them as only one. We need to acknowledge the differences between each culture. And I think this research has a really specific topic and a really specific characteristic that is to focus on the individuality of the composers, on the nationalities, on the cultural background of each composer. And this definitely can break up new path. So we can start acknowledging composers from their own perspective, from the perspective of their cultures and their background. Definitely, the main core of information of Peabody ensembles are situated in the archives. And these programs that are situated here, especially from 1977 until like the recent years, where the programs were moved for an online setting, they can provide us a rich information about how inclusion and diversity was seen, especially in the 70s, on the 80s, and in the 90s. We definitely can learn, for example, how they approached minority composers, how they approached like gender, how they approached, for example, different cultures and different like forms of music. And this information is precious for us, so we can construct the idea that how Peabody, for example, approached the inclusion of minorities in their seasons, how the institutional orchestras, how they programmed, like for example, women composers. So with all this data, we can definitely build the path and see how we did in the past, and after that, we can definitely build a better future. So the methodology of the research will be definitely going through each and every program of Peabody ensembles. We're going to collect the information of the performances, the composers. We're going to make a research about each composer. We expect some hardship in some, for example, unknown composers, but we are going to go through that and try to get as much information as we can. And after going through every program since 1977 until nowadays, we are going to organize and clean up this data. We are going to organize this information, then create graphics. So, for example, if you have a tendency to have more, women conductors or women composers, we can create a graphic through the years and through the decades of how this was shown and how this was approached and how many women conductors, for example, we had here at Peabody, or for example, black composers. How was the participation? How was the inclusion of black composers through history? So we can create graphics and definitely show if we are going up, if we're going down, and how we need to fix that, or how we need to continue doing the job we are doing.